The next item on the agenda is our How'd You Do It segment. That we've got Kevin and Irwin.
Yeah, great. So if everybody would take your cursor and mute yourself except Irwin. And then would you go up to speaker view, and you'll get a chance to see Irwin when he's speaking. If you want, you can go to full screen off to the right, and that'll give you a bunch of little pictures on the right. You might be at the very top. If you go to the very top, then you can take that one small line, and that'll get rid of all the pictures, and then you'll get a chance to see Irwin and perhaps myself. We'll see how that works. Irwin, thank you very much for agreeing for this. We're looking forward to it. In addition to teaching at Loyola, I get a chance to teach physician leaders around the country and a little bit in Europe every year. And every program that I do for the last 30 years or so, I interview somebody either from the audience or a prominent member of their group. And it's usually the most popular part because we get a chance to kind of get somebody's thinking. I call it Larry King Live. I have to stop calling it that because about 30% of the audience doesn't know who Larry King is. So I think what we'll start doing maybe is we'll call this the Legends of Lone Grove. Would that be okay, Irwin, if we called you that?
Sounds great. Glad to kick it off. Glad to kick it off.
So there's a show on the radio called How I Built This. And they interview people who have built companies. Both they ask them about their successes and some of the things that didn't work so well, and they get a chance to kind of pick at somebody's brain. So that's what we're going to do today. And I'm going to ask you a few questions like Larry King used to do. I'm just going to work from my natural and curiosity. You and I don't know each other. I haven't talked to you before. And then we're going to ask the audience to ask you some questions in a little while. So those of you that are in the audience, start thinking up questions you're going to ask him. So, Irwin, before I ask you how you built this, what did you build? Can you tell us a little bit about your career and the company that you built?
Yeah, so I am a CPA by education. I practiced in public accounting 40 plus years. And the market I served was privately held, closely held businesses, no public companies. And I was involved in the basics starting out of doing accounting work, tax work, and I gravitated towards helping business owners achieve their goals. So working with them on what their individual goals were or trying to figure out what their goals were. So over time, I gravitated from doing the work to really working with the business owners and figuring out what they wanted to be when they grow up.
So you were thinking about not just sort of the detail that CPAs think about, but you gravitated towards really helping people think about the big part of their business. Where am I going? What is this all about?
Right. I think the business owners, like a lot of people, focusing on the day-to-day activities. They don't step back and think about where I'm going to be in 6 months, a year, 5 years, or 10 years. And then all of a sudden, the 10 years, they're there and say, what have I accomplished? You know, I built my business. I'm not sure I'm in the right space. I'm not sure what the next steps are. They're thinking day to day, how am I going to get the next sale? How am I going to develop the next invention?
When did this occur to you? I mean, there's a lot of CPAs in the world that are doing tax returns and stuff like that, and they stay in that space. When did it occur to you that business owners needed this other piece from you?
I would say after about 5 years in the profession that the business owners were asking me about their financials, their gross profit, their inventory turn. I was getting deeply involved in not just answering the question, but learning about their industry, going to their association meetings. And I saw a big void for many years in services that CPA firms were providing. So
this was maybe 35 years ago, right? That you're doing this?
Yes, yes. So as I was growing in the profession, I was doing a lot of that work for our clients. And about 20 years ago, I woke up one day and came to the conclusion of maybe it's time that I developed my own firm with my mission, my own goals, and I saw a big void in the marketplace. There weren't a lot of CPAs who were providing those value-added services. And Kevin, let me break it down so you could understand what the services that I was looking at. In the CPA profession, I'll call type 1 services. Those are the services that business owners need. They need their annual tax return prepared. They need a sales tax return prepared. They need a payroll tax prepared. And they also need an annual financial statement, most likely for their bank or the business owner. So those are what I call type 1 services. They need those services and they go shopping for those services. Type 2 services are helping the client owner doing consulting. For instance, helping get that increased line of credit, helping them hire a controller, helping write business procedures. So things they need, but they would never think about going to their CPA firm. So there was a natural expansion of client services without having to go out and resell those, pick up a new client each time. Then I saw something called type 3 services, services that privately held businesses never even thought about. For instance, how to acquire a competitor, how to put in a long-term incentive plan to keep people, how to set up an ESOP if you're thinking about turning over your business to employees, or what do I do with my family business? How do I get my children involved? Or if they're not interested, do I sell the company? Do I keep the company and bring in professional management? So it's getting inside the business owner's head. And that's what I call the type 3 services. So I saw a big void in the marketplace. So what did I do 20 years ago? I wrote a business plan.
So is this like you? I mean, when you were in school, were you kind of like this, where you were thinking outside the box and thinking in these new areas? Or was this confined to this one day when you woke up 20 years ago and said, wow, there's a new service that I could be providing?
Well, maybe I'll go way back to when I was in college. And originally I wanted to be a stockbroker. I wanted to do something in business, and I wanted to be, I thought, a stockbroker. So I took the first few accounting classes, and I did very well. And I kept taking that path, and I ended up getting my degree in accounting and going for my CPA exam. And then I went into public accounting, but I guess my natural tendency was to do more consulting and entrepreneurship type items. So for many years, for 20 years, I was doing more of the consulting. The pencil pushing was being done by staff at that point.
Yeah.
So, I woke up saying, 20 years ago, hey, maybe it's time I just did something myself. I see this void. I have the background. I'm not sure how I can put it together with just myself. Yeah. And I was encouraged to put together a business plan, which was a 3-year business plan, which brought me from day one with no clients, no staff, okay, just some overhead in an office, to developing a firm with 55 people, 15 years later.
How did that go over with the family when you came up with this idea of no money, no clients, and you said, I have a great 3-year business plan?
Oh, I forgot, 2 children in college. Okay, I want to add that. I was very supportive of that, and it worked out well. I had the whole family behind me in that regard, because they knew this is what I did my whole life, and if I was, and I would be successful in it. It was all timing. But that's a good question, Kevin, and it really helped me every day as I was building my business.
Yeah, because I think when you see somebody that's as successful as you have been, people assume that somehow this was always successful. And there was this one day when you had no clients and you had this massive idea, and you had to figure out, how do I implement this thing now?
That's right.
You were doing the exact same thing that you were consulting these type 3 services with yourself, weren't you?
Right, that's correct. So let me just give you an example. After I started the business, I had a business owner call me who I knew from an association. And he said, Irwin, I'd like you to handle a project for me. And then it was one project and two projects and three projects. And finally, I asked him, I said, Bill, you've got a great relationship with the CPA firm you've had for many, many years. Why are you having me do this? He says, you were so nice to me in helping me and giving me advice in my business as a friend for many, many years, and I wanted to pay you back. So getting back to Kevin, your question, I was doing a lot of that work and building a foundation of goodwill with the community.
That's really brilliant because, you know, I ask people, have you ever asked your boss why they hired you? And they say, no, I've never done that. And you were smart enough back then to say, with all the resources this person had, why are you choosing me? It's good to know that, right?
Right, it is. And so how did I learn some of that consulting, whether it's type 2 or type 3 consulting? Attended a lot of seminars. I was very lucky that education was very important when I first started out in public accounting. And it would be the technical area, audit and tax, and the non-technical, more of the consulting and I'll say people type getting together in that regard. And I read a lot. And I also looked at some of my very successful clients and picked out pieces of good and learned pieces of bad from them. So, and that's over a long period of time. I sort of built the foundation in the financial community with business owners, associations, financial institutions, money managers, and they pay off. You don't know when, but they pay off.
I got two questions. Then we're going to ask the audience to ask you some questions. So audience, start getting ready. The first question is, when you were a little boy, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a business owner.
Really? Back then?
Yeah. It would now, I don't know what you consider a little boy. I'm talking 10, 12 years old.
Yeah.
As a little boy, I'm not sure. Yeah. So, but at 10 or 12, I wanted to do something in business.
Wow. Did you have models like parents or family that were in business?
No, I think that people around me were really employees working for bigger companies. I saw some of the quote unquote pains or things they went through as they were employees rather than employers. And I said, my goal is to be an employer, not an employee.
You were going in different, sort of like your life. You're going to go in a different direction and answer needs that people don't even know they have.
Right, that's correct. And think outside the box. You have to think outside the box.
Yeah. One of my friends says, don't think outside the box, throw the box out the window. And it sounds like that's one of the things you did. Second question I have for you, this is the Economic Development Council of Along Grove. If I was a merchant now, or if I'm deciding to come in with my new restaurant or my new idea, what do you think is something I really have to do in order to become more successful, to take the next right step as a downtown merchant or as someone who's considering coming into Long Grove with their business?
So I'd say the first thing is you really need a plan in writing and very specific with line items, dates, accountability, and budgets. Okay. Then you need someone to look at that who is not afraid to tell you that you're wrong or you're crazy and what you put down and help tweak that You don't want to ask one of your relatives or one of your other family members. You may want to ask someone who's in your business line, but maybe a different part of the country, maybe someone from an association, maybe another professional. You have to have someone really analyze that. And I still have my original business plan that I put together with a lot of red marks because someone I had give me some feedback. Lots of red marks, lots of lines, lots of cross-outs. So, and you have to have someone get into your head to answer the questions. What happens if you don't have the sales over these 6 months? Are you willing to borrow against your house, to borrow more money, to go to the bank, to sign personally? Are you going to be working 60 hours a week? Are you going to be doing all the things you have to? So you really have to have someone interview you.
Yeah. So passion, mission, enthusiasm is not enough.
No. It's all important. It's all important. You know, you have to add hard work, some luck, and people helping you out. And don't afraid to be honest with yourself as you go along. You're going to have failures as you go along, and hopefully there'll be successes when you get to the end of the line.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, everybody, will you go to the gallery view? We'll bring everybody back, and you can open up your videos. It's always best to be the first person to ask the question. So who would like to be the first person to ask a question? Just jump in.
Irwin, if there was one thing that you'd do over the life of your career here, what would it be?
Well, I'm going to answer that. There's two things. One is to start the business earlier in my life, but that's hard when you have little kids running around and you have mortgages and loans and everything else. But two, on the business side, I think that I was on the fast track with growing the business, but I think I would have invested more money back in the business to get an exponential return early on.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank
Somebody
you.
else?
Those things.
Good question. Somebody else, another question?
Irwin, did you ever think about specifically where you were going to locate your business, or was it just I'm here and I'm going to grow where I am?
Well, actually, Roger, that's really, really good, because my whole life I was taking the train downtown, then taking a bus to my office on North Michigan Avenue, and then the reverse route. So it was an hour and a half commute each way. So I ended up locating my first office in Northbrook, which was about 20 minutes from my house at that time. That's how I picked the location. Now, as the business grew, and maybe this gets back to Mike's question also, as the business grew and the people, college grads were moving downtown, there was a big void because we would hire people out of college. They would work for us for a year or two, then get an apartment in Wrigleyville or River North, and then subsequently quit. So we did all the training, and they would go work for a downtown firm. So one of the things that we tried to do early on, but it didn't work, was to find a downtown location, but we couldn't staff it properly. Then we looked at buying a downtown firm, and we spent lots and lots of time, many years, trying to find the right firm that fit into our organization. And well, what's happened now is no one's in downtown and no one's in the suburbs, unfortunately. But Roger, I started out in the suburbs because of the commute.
Yeah. Somebody else? Question? You can ask them anything you want. Irwin, how about? Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
James.
Apologies.
No, go ahead.
Irwin, James, how do you keep? You seem like you lost employees after you trained them just to the city living. After what other were there any tricks that you had to keep well-trained employees besides them wanting to move to the city?
Yes, we've had many situations that we presented to our people. One is you could work from home. If you're out at a client for half a day, and you're let's say in the West Loop, you don't have to come back to Northbrook to work the other half of the day. You have your laptop, you could work at home. Maybe you can do some marketing, maybe you can entertain a client. So we tried to figure out what fit into that individual. We even said, if you want, we'll rent a temporary office downtown for you. The second part was more money to compensate for commuting, time, and fuel. But it was very tough to get people to stay. We had to spend time with them and telling them what their career path would be. It's not just don't get hung up on the commute. Let's talk about what your career path could be, where you could go down the road, what you could achieve with the right type of firm. And we did have some successes with that, but I would say that 80% just wanted to be downtown with their friends.
So this human relations skills then was important in your business, really understanding the employee's mindset and in not just accommodating to them, but creatively figuring out how do we integrate them into my business.
Right. Let me give you one other example on that. In 2008, 2009, we all know what happened, that we had the banking and economic crisis. And unfortunately, like a lot of businesses, we had to terminate 2 or 3 people.
Yeah.
And on the human side of this, I knew there were some young staff who lived in the Wrigleyville area that it wasn't a phone call to them. I actually went and met with them at night, 3 people, to talk to them about their future, what could happen, why these people aren't with us, and a little bit about business. And those 3 people stayed with us for a long time,
Where did you learn that? I mean, a lot of CPAs, the stereotype CPA is in many people's minds is they're just worried about the data and they're not that great with people. Where did you learn how to be better with people?
I think I saw it through my clients. I saw how they work with their customers, how they work with their people. It was an education for me in my early years to spend time with my clients, both at their place of business and socially. And I learned a lot from them. And I took, like I said before, the good and the bad.
So you were a sponge back then.
That's correct. That's correct.
Somebody else? Question? Anybody?
Maybe I can make, Kevin, one more comment, because we never finished the end of this. So in the business was very successful and we grew, but the world changed. We were able to acquire larger and larger business clients. We had a few niches in manufacturing and healthcare and high net worth. And our clients were becoming more complex, A, because of the tax law, B, of requirements of their business. Some of them were going international, and we just didn't have all the resources that we needed. So in 2013 and 14, I saw something else that was happening in the business besides not having a downtown location. We were not able to close on the opportunities we had and provide our clients with the best service and product. So at that time, I belonged to an international association of accounting firms about our size, some larger. And in every meeting we would have, someone would sit down next to me and say, hey, we want to be in Chicago. We see your statistics. We know you're a good firm. And after saying no many times, I finally thought about what's the future. If we're going to play in the bigger leagues, we need a bigger firm and more resources. So into 2016, we ended up merging into a firm that wanted to be in Chicago. They were a national firm, had the same values we did, and it worked out very well. I ended up working there for 3 years as a partner, and then May of 19, I retired from the CPA profession. But right now, I do some consulting. I sit on advisory boards for about 6 companies and have a great time thinking of things outside the box for them to consider. Yeah. So it's great.
You're still back in that type 3 service, aren't you?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so we have a few minutes left, and as part of this, Irwin's been gracious enough to take questions that we had absolutely no rehearsal for whatsoever. So here's what we'd like to do. I'd like as many of you as possible in a few minutes, would you tell Irwin directly, what did you like, learn, or appreciate about what he said? And the only thing he's going to say is thank you if he wants to. But he's not going to take any more questions. He's just going to say thank you. So it's always best to be the first person to offer this. What did you like, learn, or appreciate about what he just said? Unmute yourself and jump in.
No, I appreciate it.
Irwin, it was.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Irwin, it was really useful to hear you say how important it is to network, to move beyond just getting the work done and getting to know other people in your business, and how that has led to much of your success, or at least it sounds that way. Thanks for sharing that.
Thanks,
Irwin, you say thank you.
Or
Thank
not.
you.
Somebody else?
Thank you.
This is James, and we really enjoyed. I'm here with Jonathan, an associate of mine, and we really enjoyed hearing about your business plan and the background that you have and how you successfully built up your business over the years.
Oh, great. Thank you for the comment.
By the way, James is a JD and a CPA, so he's got a little bit of mojo going on in his brain like you do.
Hey, let me just mention, if anyone has questions after that, please feel free to reach out to me. Be glad to help anyone I can.
Thank you. Somebody else?
I think, Irwin, your commitment to continuous learning personally and otherwise is just awesome. And the fact that you're participating in Long Grove's EDC after so many years in the industry, and you're bringing the skills and the talents that you've amassed over years to this commission. It's just, thank you very, very much for your involvement and continued, devotion to this community as well.
Yeah. Glad to do it, Michael.
You know, Irwin, we're going to wind up. What impressed me the most about you was from 10 years old, you're thinking differently. I'm not going to be an employee like these other people I see. I'm going to be a business owner. And that really stuck with you. And then your commitment to business owners really fueled your career way beyond what a mere mortal CPA would be thinking about at 20 years ago. And then now today, you're still devoted to, the village of Long Grove, who is trying to think of those things. So it's just been delightful to talk to you. I really appreciate you being our first legend of Long Grove.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for moderating.
I was interviewing some doctors once. These are fourth year. They're going to be chiefs. So it's a big deal for some doctors, about 60 of them, young people. And I'm interviewing. So I try to pick somebody out who's a little different. And I picked out a young woman who is a dentist. And all the others are MDs and DOs. And so I was interviewing her. And at one point, one of the doctors, I said, would you like to ask a question? And one of the doctors leaned forward and looked at her and said, what's your favorite tooth? And everybody laughed. And she said, oh, and she got all excited. And then she said, she named the tooth. It's 3 back from your canine. This is a great tooth. And she talked about the architecture of the tooth and what its function was. Very interesting. Everybody was like, holy crap, I didn't know that teeth were that important, right?
That's great.
Later, a surgeon told me, he said, she reminded me of the fire that's inside of me when I went to medical school. He said, now I know why I really want to do what I do. I went to my dentist, by the way, a few weeks later, and I told him the story, and he said, Kevin, that is a great tooth. He said, if you want one tooth in your mouth, that's the one you want. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. And Irwin, today you reminded me personally of, yes, level 1's important. Start working on level 3. Thank you very much. You did a great job.
You're welcome.
Nice job. Well done.
And we're supposed to give an applause by waving our hands on Zoom. So you get a standing ovation. Thank you. Turn it over to Roger.
Thank you very much, Kevin. That was
You're welcome.
insightful on a whole bunch of levels. Hopefully we can get some more of this going on. Anybody else, any new business before we working out of here?
I'd like to thank Irwin also. You made my morning and hopefully my day. I enjoyed hearing you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. You're welcome. Glad to do it. Glad to do it.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn? Then we just sit around and talk for a while. Okay.
I'll move to adjourn.
Thank you. Second.
I'll second.
Second for us. Thank you. Any opposed to the motion to adjourn? Hearing none. The meeting is formally adjourned.